Now we're going to briefly discuss business cycles and how the multiplier effect is actually a mathematical representation of business cycle activity. Okay? Now, long time ago, if you've looked at all my videos, you've seen that long time ago, I graphically presented what a business cycle is. And what it is essentially if we took over time, okay, if we graphed real GDP over time, it would trend upwards, okay? And this is what we call potential, okay? And potential GDP. And potential GDP grows at a constant rate. Let me move this, center it up. Potential GDP grows at a constant rate, and you know, and it simply means that the economy is expanding over time. We're becoming larger. A business cycle, however, is a fluctuation around this trend. Okay, that's a business cycle. And when we are in this upswing portion of the business cycle, the economy is expanding. When we're in the downswing portion of this business cycle, the economy is contracting. Okay. In other words, the economy on its own is self-correcting. Okay. If we just left the economy as it is, there would be dips, there would be expansions, dips, expansions, and it would simply self-correct. But how do we represent this mathematically? Well, we represent it mathematically through the multiplier. Remember that the multiplier effect is this multi-stage process that affects consumption with some initial injection, okay, of an autonomous variable. And if we remember our last function where we calculated the multiplier effect, let me do this in black so it's easier to see. We had 1 over 1 minus MPC times C0 plus I0 plus G0 plus NX0. Okay? Now, let's assume that the economy is contracting. Okay, so we're moving along this path in the economy, moving into a recession, for instance. Let's just assume it lasts at least 2 quarters. Well, what turns the economy around? An increase in I0. Okay, so the economy hits bottom. For some reason, firms feel more optimistic about the future, and they start increasing their investment. When they start increasing their investment, okay, the initial investment injection bumps the economy up a little bit, okay? But then the multiplier effect kicks in, okay? And you get further changes in consumption that drive the economy upward, okay, from that initial injection of investment. But eventually this dies out, okay? What was the total change in GDP from this trough to this peak? It was whatever this change in investment was times the multiplier. Now, let's just say that for some reason, the export industry gets hit, say with labor union strikes or whatever, and dollars start being lost in the export industry. Well, you know, NX0 equals EX0 minus IM0. Okay? If EX0 falls, okay, if EX0 falls, that means NX0 falls. Okay? So if this economy, say, expanded, hit this peak, and we get a negative shock to exports, Well, that first initial dip is caused by the initial fall in exports, okay? But then the multiplier kicks in, only reverse, and consumption starts drawing out of the economy step by step. And that leads the economy in the other direction. So how much did GDP change from this peak to this trough? By the fall in exports times the multiplier. That's how much GDP changed. Eventually, of course, this comes to an end as those changes in consumption go to zero. And then we get a positive shock to all this, and it sends the economy in the reverse.